By the end of the talk, I do want everyone to be able to hopefully feel a bit calmer and more in control, understand a bit about psychological stress, also change how you think about stress, managing your thoughts and your feelings, and that happens with practice. And then also, I'm going to be supporting all of you to take consistent small action for impactful positive change. And the consistent small action is one of the themes I want to be underscoring today. It is something that I do myself. And I find that just a little bit of action makes for big changes, especially if they're done consistently. So I do want to share that with all of you. A little bit about me. I got my AA at Ventura Community College, followed by my bachelor's degree at UC Santa Barbara. I then got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy at the University of Laverne. I then got myself licensed as a marriage and family therapist. I worked in community mental health for many years. Community mental health is essentially helping those who live in communities that are underserved. These are individuals who live in communities that might be in food deserts. They likely don't have a lot of resources available to them. So that was my focus for many, many years. I worked with Head Start. I also worked with LA Child Guidance Clinic in the Los Angeles area. I also did have a private practice as well. I've been a professor at ARC since 2002. And after I got tenure, I did stop renewing my license. So I am not a therapist at this time, but I am focused on doing mental health education here at ARC. And then also I have my own business at Lotus Thrive, also doing mental health education in the community. So for just a moment, I'd like you to just think for just a moment about something that you're proud of accomplishing. Was this something that came easy, or was it something that required of you more than you realized you were capable of? Was it challenging? Is it something that had obstacles that were unexpected and then you overcame them? For the most part, those things that we consider ourselves proud of are things that challenged us. And so one of the themes I want to bring up today as well is the idea that challenge isn't necessarily bad. Challenge can be positive, it can be good. It's how we think about it, how we behave in response to challenge that will get us feeling like we are in control, or feeling like we are out of control. And we have choices here. So by the end of this talk, what I'd like you to be able to do is to feel more competent in managing your thoughts and managing your behavior. And doing so tends to lead to individuals feeling calmer and more capable. So let's start with, what is the definition of psychological stress? So firstly, there's lots of different definitions of stress. Secondly, with regards to stress, stress is inevitable in all of our lives. As long as you are alive, you will have stress. And so, well, might as well come to terms with it. So firstly, there are many, many definitions of stress, but this is one that I like in particular. This is a classic definition that was first coined in 1984 by psychologists Lazarus and Folkman. And so let's take a look at their definition of stress and then break it down a little bit. Lazarus and Folkman define stress as a particular relationship between the person and the environment that is appraised by the person as taxing or exceeding his or her resources and endangering their well-being. So I want to point out a few things. One is the idea of this is a particular relationship between the person and the environment. Lazarus and Folkman are talking about an interaction between that person and the environment that they are in. This is something dynamic. It is not static. It is something that changes over time. And again, it's about that interaction. There are some individuals, those of you who've ever been around infants, and I'm going to assume all of you have been around infants at some point, you know that they're all born a bit different. And some are born with a very mild kind of temperament, like not very reactive to what's going on in the environment around them. And some babies are born very reactive and crying at every little thing and have disruptive kind of rhythms and so on. And how it is that we naturally respond, the good news is, can be mitigated. But there are some individuals who do experience less stress because, again, it's that relationship between that person, their temperament, their personality, and the environment, okay? And then here's where we have control. This is the good news. That is appraised by the person as exceeding his or her resources and endangering their well-being. That sounds very scary, but the good news is the appraised part. That is where we have some control. So here we have a saber-toothed tiger. As our species evolved, we evolved to recognize a threat like a saber-toothed tiger, okay? And this is obviously a threat. This is something that you want to respond immediately to. You don't want to have to think about it and to go, oh gosh, how sharp are those teeth? Instead, what we do is we have an immediate reaction. Hold on. There we go. We have an immediate reaction, and that immediate reaction is the stress response: fight, flee, or freeze. The stress response evolved to protect us from immediate threats, like a tiger coming into our immediate environment, like an earthquake and buildings falling and things like that. We evolved to respond to an immediate threat without having to think about it, with our brain going into automatic, and we're either going to run or we're going to fight or we're going to freeze. What fighting does is it gets us out of there. I'm sorry, no, fighting doesn't get us out of there. Fighting gets us to hopefully take down the threat. Fleeing gets us out of there and out of the situation. And then freezing, interestingly, what that does is that has us immobilizing ourselves and also becoming more aware of what's going around us. And again, this happens automatically sometimes when somebody is in an emergency situation. They will involuntarily freeze, be very much aware of what's going on around them. But interestingly, a lot of predators, such as a saber-toothed tiger, will respond to movement, and they don't see as well when their prey is motionless. So this evolved as a means of protecting us, and this is a good thing. When it's not a good thing is when we appraise non-threats as threats, which is something that we have a tendency to do in our modern lives. And when we do that, we trigger what's called an alarm phase. So there's actually three phases to the fight or flight response. The first phase is the alarm phase, when we have perceived something as a threat, whether it's a dog running loose in the neighborhood, or whether it's your boss telling you, I'd like you to stay a little bit later today to get some work done. And you're like, I have to get the kids, I have to get dinner on, I've got mother-in-law coming over today. You might perceive that as a threat. And again, we're going to talk about your choice in that regard. When you perceive something as a threat, even when it's not, your body responds as if it is a threat. And so that's when fight, flee, or freeze is automatically triggered. Your body is mobilized to address the matter, or immobilized to avoid detection. Now, the second phase is the resistance phase. This is when you have the threat has not gone away. The perceived threat has not gone away. Let's say you have constant stress at work, and again, you are perceiving it as a threat. When you go into phase 2, your temperature tends to run a bit higher, your blood pressure goes up, you're breathing more shallowly. Interestingly, your ability to resist illness goes up. What you're doing is you're depleting your body's resources at this point. So your ability to resist illness actually goes up a bit, but if this continues, it can cause problems. Let me go back a moment. If you resolve the threat at this point, you might have a dip in your health briefly. You might get momentarily ill. You might need to rest, and then you go back to baseline. But if it doesn't resolve and you go into phase 3, your body and mind are depleted, and then you have an increased risk for more serious illness or collapse. And that's what we want to avoid if we possibly can. And again, this is for prolonged stress that isn't resolved. And what's happening here, this is a basic model for the nervous system. All of you are aware of the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. And then we have the peripheral nervous system, which is made up of the autonomic nervous system, which has to do with your organs and glands, and the somatic nervous system, which is the voluntary movement of skeletal muscles. That autonomic nervous system is divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The sympathetic nervous system is what gets us in the fight or flight response, and it mobilizes us for action, and it's really awesome. And I'm glad that we have it. It helps us out. The parasympathetic is our rest and digest system. It is also associated with freezing, and it helps us conserve energy. Now, I just want to check in with all of you. Can you let me know, just by a show of hands, if I'm going too fast and you need me to slow down? So just go ahead and go to the bottom of the screen where it says reactions and raise your hand if you think I'm going too fast, or give me a thumbs up like Mary Goodall did if you think that the speed is just fine. It's a little difficult on Zoom when I don't have immediate responses with faces. All right, it looks like the consensus is that the speed is just fine. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. All right, so moving on. Again, sympathetic, fight or flight, parasympathetic, calming, rest and digest, conserves energy, and also has to do with the freeze response. Now, this is where we're going to be focusing much of our talk from now on. What we want to do is avoid activating that sympathetic nervous system that is activated when we perceive something as a threat. My boss says, I need you to stay late, and I don't want to. And then also, this might be interfering with my personal life. And if I perceive it as a threat, I'm going to be triggering that fight or flight system. If I perceive it differently, I might be able to instead, or if I purposely activate my parasympathetic nervous system, I might be able to avoid some of those negative effects of stress. So let's take a look at those negative or unfavorable effects of stress. Firstly, in the short and long term, we can suffer from ill health when we are experiencing the unfavorable effects of stress, when we are experiencing day-to-day challenges as threats, running late for work, having to pick up the kids, get dinner going, etc., having somebody cancel an appointment or somebody make an appointment, have to make an appointment, and so on and so forth. If we have too much going on, we can perceive that as a threat. It can contribute to chronic illness, ultimately premature death if things don't resolve. Psychological effects are irritability. I know I get irritable when I'm stressed out. I'm not fun to be around. Anxiety goes up. If you already have a predisposition for a psychological disorder, that can become exacerbated, such as depression, anxiety, or other psychological disorders. Pardon me, my computer just, there we go. All right, and now I need to check and see. Sorry, let me check and see if you can still see me. So let me open this. Yes, okay, you can still see me. Okay, good. All right, and then we also have loss of enjoyment or motivation. I'm going to assume all of you have experienced this at some point, where it's just, this is where your quality of life is affected. When you've been under stress, you're not happy. The things that usually bring you joy, hanging out with the family, going on trips, just reading a book, maybe you're having difficulty even concentrating, those things aren't bringing you joy. And if a friend calls you up and says, let's meet for coffee, it's like, oh my gosh, one more thing that I have to do, instead of how nice to be able to meet someone for coffee. Again, we become more irritable, we lose our sense of enjoyment, we lose our motivation, have difficulty focusing, and then of course, relationships become more strained as well. Those are the unfavorable effects of stress. Stress is not all bad. There are favorable effects of stress as well. For one thing, if you are viewing stress more as a challenge than a threat, what it gives you is the energy to conquer your problems. That's pretty awesome. So that energy that has you feeling agitated when you're experiencing the unfavorable effects of stress can have you feeling more aroused, more focused, more energized when you're experiencing the favorable effects of stress. Stress isn't here to harm us. We have some control over how to manage stress. When you are experiencing the favorable effects of stress, you might have increased motivation. I remember a particular moment when I was in college. This was back in the days when everything wasn't locked down, when college was closed. I was living on campus at this point, and I was taking an art class. And I was so excited about my art project. It was 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I was so excited about it. I got up and I went to the art studio and I worked on it. And it was awesome. And I had the best time. And so you can have, it doesn't have to happen at 2 a.m., but you can have increased motivation as a favorable effect of stress. Stress can also lead to pleasant emotions. Again, if you're experiencing the favorable effects of stress, if you're looking at a stressful event as a challenge, as something that, let's see if I can do this. Let's see if I can conquer this issue. Let's see how I solve this. And you can feel, again, motivated, energized, and positive. Feeling the favorable effects of stress is also feeling courageous as well. Gosh, how brave am I to be able to do this thing, to be able to manage this thing that is difficult. And then also, one of the favorable things that happens when people experience stress is they have increased sociability. One of the hormones that is released during stress, there are a number. One of them that has been talked about in other areas, but not so much when it comes to stress, is the hormone of oxytocin. Some of you may have heard about it. It's gotten a lot of good press. It's often referred to as the love hormone. And this love hormone, what happens is when people experience stress, especially women, when people experience stress, oxytocin is released, and this is what has us reaching out to others for support. And whether you feel like you want to reach out to others or not, you actually can do so, and that will help you to feel better about stress. But many of you may have had this happen where you've gone to work all day and you come home and you see your loved ones, and the first thing you say, let me just tell you about the day I had. And don't you just feel better, more connected, talking to people who understand, or at least get you, and understand that had a hard day, somebody cares, somebody listens. And that increased sociability, research shows, actually can be a protective factor for your heart and other parts of your physical health, reducing those unfavorable effects of stress and increasing those favorable effects of stress. So we also have the holidays coming up. And in terms of the holidays, many people experience increased stress. Firstly, some of the contributing factors are they have high expectations. The Hallmark Channel gives us lots of perfection to try to live up to, which is impossible. And so there are high expectations in terms of everybody, quote, should be happy, everybody should be connected and getting along. And people are people, they're not always happy, they don't always get along. And so, but these high expectations can sometimes get in the way of experiencing the holiday as it is, and then being disappointed that it isn't as we wished it were. Many people experience more loneliness around the holidays as well, especially those who don't have immediate family. And there are ways to deal with that, which I'm going to talk about before we finish the talk today. Many people also experience more financial strain around the holidays. You feel the pressure to buy gifts for people when maybe there isn't a lot of extra money. And then, of course, there's the time crunch. Many of us are working full time or working a lot. And then on top of it, we have these extra duties that are associated with holidays. And some of those effects, again, the negative effects, can be feeling isolated, having your relationship strained. There can be an increase in negative thoughts. You know, this is all up to me. If I didn't do everything, nothing would get done. You know, all of that kind of negative thinking that decreases your joy. And that, again, leads to a loss of enjoyment. And then those individuals who do have psych disorders, 64% of people with psych disorders, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whatever the psych disorder is, 64% of people with psych disorders report an increase in their symptoms over the holidays. And so that's very sad, and also it makes things even more difficult. Pardon me while I grab a sip of water. So you remember these terms from the previous slides, especially when we talked about the definition of stress, the word appraised and perceived. Here's where we have control. What appraisal is in psychology is evaluating a situation or an environment or a person or saber-toothed tiger in a particular way, and then having emotions in response to that evaluation. So if I appraise my boss asking me to stay late tonight as a threat, I am going to have an emotional response to that that's going to be negative, that's going to be increased tension, that might be irritability, and so on. Okay. Perceived is similar. Perceived, we do have choices in terms of how we perceive things. Do I perceive this as something that I can challenge myself over, or do I perceive this as something that's out of my control? So this is where we have choice, and this is where our power lies. Our power lies in appraisal. So what I'm going to support you to do, and we're going to get to how to do that in just a moment, is to use your power and put energy into appraising matters in ways that are healthier for you and help you to feel the more positive effects of stress. Because again, we're not going to escape stress. It's here. We're going to manage it better. And then in addition, perceive our control in a way that is useful. What is it that I have control over? What can I let go of? I'm going to put my energy into those things I can control. So, and I also want to make this clear. Some of you like, yeah, I've heard that before. And perhaps you have. Yeah, one of the keys to this kind of work is that it takes practice, and it takes time to become good at doing this. So being familiar with it, being familiar with these concepts isn't enough for positive change. Taking action is what leads to positive change. So again, you have a choice. Here I just put a bunch of things together with that could be everyday kinds of challenges that an individual is experiencing. And so if you're looking at your everyday challenges, I've got too much to do, not enough time to do it in, this is a threat, you're going to be triggering the fight, flee, or freeze automatic response in your body. And you might find yourself agitated, irritated, and then also sometimes even just paralyzed because you don't even know where to start. You find yourself procrastinating, avoiding the tasks, and so on. You've perceived these daily challenges as a threat, and this has triggered your fight, flight, and freeze response. And then here's where you have the choice. You can look at the everyday kinds of challenges that you have and look at them as challenges, very similar to like what an athlete does. Athletes challenge themselves. Let's say that somebody's doing a sprint, and they'll challenge themselves. I want to sprint faster in this race than I did in my last race. And they will have a measurable goal. They'll have a number that they want to reach, and then they feel energized. They're goal oriented. They're like, I can do this. Let me practice and get there. And that's what I'm asking you to do when it comes to managing daily stressors, is perceiving them very similar to how an athlete perceives their challenges, their athletic challenges, perceiving your daily challenges similarly. So keep in mind your mindset influences whether you experience more unfavorable or favorable effects of stress. And again, this is where you have control. You have control over your mindset. And if you feel like you don't, it just means you need more practice, okay? And we all need practice. I want to make this clear. One of the things that I get out of doing these talks is a reminder for myself to do the things that I teach other people to do. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So, but practice is what gets us to be more like the levitating avocado over here on the right side, and less like the poor guy over here on the left who's not doing very well. So we want to be more like the levitating avocado, and manage stress in a way that is in a calm, controlled manner that has us having a better quality of life and experiencing more joy. Life is short. We want to experience more joy. So let's take a look. So we have choices. So I'm going through 5 choices and 5 actions you can take. So that's the next part of my talk. 5 choices and 5 actions. The first choice is with regards to appraisal and control. If you appraise an event to be a threat and outside of your control, you experience more of the unfavorable effects of stress. If I'm running late to the office and I've hit a traffic jam, I'm like, oh man, my boss is going to be mad and I can't make the traffic move and I'm feeling my blood pressure going up. So if I'm already in the traffic jam, I can't do anything about that at that point. I mean, I might be able to call the boss and just say, "Hey, I'm on my way, but I'm stuck in a traffic jam." That's something I can control, right? That right away that reduces my stress a little bit. What I can do is I can challenge myself too. How can I, since I can't control the traffic, what can I do to just make this moment more bearable? Back when I lived in LA, this was in the days, so I was driving an old rickety car. I didn't have any kind of a tape player or a CD, or a CD player or anything like that. I just had the radio. And I would turn on, when I would be stuck in traffic, and just so that you know, in terms of what traffic was like, I lived 30, well, let me see, I lived about 20 miles away from my office. And that means my commute would range from 30 minutes when there was no traffic, which was rare, to 2 hours when there was traffic. So I would leave my office and I would just be in it and I could do nothing about it. So I would turn on the oldie station and just sing along to all the songs and just make it fun for myself as much as I possibly could. My emotions are positive. I'm not worried. I can't do anything about the traffic jam, so I'm getting there. And again, if you're running late for the office as well, what is in your control? What's out of your control? What's in your control is you can call up and say, "I'm on my way," and then make your immediate environment more pleasant for yourself because you can't control that traffic. Um, your self-talk influences your appraisals. If you say to yourself, this problem is monstrous. I actually heard a colleague say that about scheduling classes. It's monstrous. I'm like, it's scheduling classes. It's a problem. I'm sure it's challenging, but it's also doable. And so, and while it is, there's our time constraints and so on, this is doable. It's not a saber-toothed tiger trying to eat you. It is, in fact, a schedule. It is, in fact, a task that you can, in fact, do. It might take you a little longer than you would like. It might take some more thought than you would like, but is it doable? So again, you have control over how it is that you appraise these tasks that you are assigned or that you are doing. Um, Here's another example. Let's just say that somebody has a stressful event like a work deadline and at the same time family obligations, because we are all multifaceted people. We all have our personal lives and our work lives, and sometimes those are in conflict. And let's just say that you've got two things going on, the stressful work deadline plus some family obligations. Taking the top approach, you can appraise this as, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired and I'm going to fail at parenting." What's going to happen if you're telling yourself that is you're more likely to panic, more likely to freeze, more likely to feel overwhelmed. You're going to have your blood pressure going up. You're going to have more of those negative, those harmful hormones from the stress response released into your body. And over the long term, that's not so good for you. So that's going to be your response if you appraise this event as a threat. If you appraise the work deadline and family obligations as something manageable, "I don't like this. This is challenging. This wasn't expected, but let's see how I can do this. Let's prioritize." You're going to feel more aroused. You're going to feel more focused. You're going to have the energy to handle the stressful event. And again, that is one of the positive things that our stress response does for us. It gives us energy. Use it for good. So, in summary, the first choice is to appraise the situation in a way that is more useful for you. Appraisal influences our emotional responses. If I appraise something as threatening, I'm experiencing negative effects of stress. I'm angry, I'm irritable, I'm not able to sleep. But if I appraise it more as a challenge, I'm excited, I'm aroused, I'm focused. Self-talk influences appraisal. All right, this isn't what I wanted. I don't like this, and I can do this. I can manage this. Other people have managed worse. If they could do it, I can do it. Practice changing. So in terms of an action to take, one of the things I want to focus on is actions. Practice changing your self-talk and notice how the way you feel changes. Practicing, so everybody has their own voice inside their heads. That's normal. And so, and then some of us also talk to ourselves. I know I do that too. So listen to how it is that you talk to yourself. Listen to the things that you say to yourself. And if you wouldn't want somebody else saying that to you, or you wouldn't want to say that to somebody else, then don't say that to yourself and change it. Come up with something more positive. Trying to think of something some self-talk that I do for myself. So for instance, I will say to myself, "You've got this, Natasha. You can do it." Okay. Um, and at first, if you're used to talking to yourself in a negative way, if you're used to kind of putting yourself down, it's going to feel really foreign and awkward to say nice things to yourself inside your own head. But with practice, that becomes more natural. With practice, it becomes second nature. So let yourself go through the awkward period of, this feels very strange. I hope nobody can hear what I'm saying to myself in my head. But I also want to support you to be kind to yourself. Treat yourself and talk to yourself as you would talk to your friends, your family members, your children. Talk to yourself in a way that has you feeling good about yourself. And again, it takes practice. Another action to take is to adopt an optimistic mindset. First, let's talk about what optimism is and what it isn't. Optimism and pessimism are not the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. Outside of psychology, that's how people define optimism and pessimism. If you see the glass is half full, you are optimistic. If you see it as half empty, you are pessimistic. But in psychology, optimism and pessimism are viewed differently. They're viewed as what are called explanatory styles. How do you explain good events that happen in your life? How do you explain bad events that happen in your life? Again, we only have so much control. We have control over our mindset, but we don't have control over external events a lot of the times. How do we explain those? That's optimism and pessimism, okay? So let's say that somebody does experience an unfavorable, stressful event. Let's say that there was something due at work and they failed to meet the deadline. That's not something anybody wants to have happen, but it does sometimes. How does the optimist explain this stressful event? I took on too many less important tasks right before the project was due. The pessimist says something to the effect of, I didn't get it in on time because I'm lazy and I'm not very smart. What the pessimist is doing is making bad events about them as a person. They're going into self-blame. They're making it about them. They're also things like lazy and not being very smart. That affects every aspect of your life. If that is how you're talking to yourself in terms of your inherent character and how you see yourself, that affects everything you do. If you're lazy and not very smart, that affects other aspects of your life. It doesn't something that goes away. But the optimist, the way that they're explaining the bad event, I took on too many less important tasks before the project was due. Is that fixable? It's fixable. What happens for the optimist when they experience something unfavorable is they go into problem-solving mode. They say, this isn't about me as a person. This is about a decision that I made, not about who I am. It's not self-blame. Didn't make the best decision there. I probably took on too many unimportant tasks. I can make a different decision next time. It's not about me. It doesn't affect everything I do. And it's going to go away quickly because the next time I'm going to make a different decision. So for the optimist, they don't dwell on negative events. They're like, messed up. All right, I'll do something different next time. The pessimist tends to dwell on it. And the pessimist tends to go into self-blame. And for those of you who are saying, oh my gosh, I'm the pessimist. So firstly, you're not alone. And then secondly, there are ways to address this. Okay, and so we're going to get to that in just a moment. So that's how pessimists and optimists explain unfavorable events. How do they explain favorable events? The things that we do want to happen. I want to point out that even when something happens in our life that we want to happen, but it requires an adaptation, we're still under stress. If you get a promotion that you worked hard for and you got it, you're under stress because you now have new duties and new responsibilities. But and even if you wanted it, you're still under stress. Again, stress is inevitable. And so how do the optimists and pessimists differ in how they explain favorable events? So here's a favorable event where somebody says, I met the deadline, I did well on this project, phew, that's done. The optimist says, I'm a hard worker, I learn quickly and I manage time well. The optimist says, the favorable things in life happened because of me and who I am and how I am in the world. This isn't narcissistic. This isn't about ego. This is just about saying, I can do well. I can feel pride. I can feel good about what I'm doing and about the accomplishments that I've achieved. The poor pessimist doesn't feel good about their accomplishments. The pessimist says, anyone could have done that. I was lucky it wasn't a harder project. The pessimist, when something good happens, takes an opposite approach than when something bad happens. Again, when something bad happens, the pessimist says, it's about me, it affects everything I do. When something good happens, it's not about me, I was just lucky. Good things don't last. That's a common pessimistic approach to life, is saying things like good things don't last. And again, and the pessimist is experiencing more of the negative effects of stress, more negative emotions. Optimist is experiencing more positive emotions. So one of the things I want to support you to do is to try to think more like the optimist. And so here's why. Optimists tend to have healthier lives. They tend to live longer, and they live longer and healthier. I want to make it clear, anybody can get sick at any time. Again, we don't have control over everything, but when it comes to things like stress-related diseases, optimists aren't getting them so much. The pessimists are more likely to get those. The other thing is optimists achieve more. Optimists get excited about challenges. Optimists are, again, I'm not going to ever do this myself. I have other challenges, but the optimist, if there's a mountain to be climbed, it's the optimists that are climbing the mountains, not the pessimists, okay? But optimists set up more challenges for themselves. They try more things. They and they experience more positive emotions, better health, and they tend to, again, like I said, achieve more. So I want to support you to be more optimistic in your approach to managing stress. So adopting an optimistic mindset, when something bad happens, go into problem-solving mode. Get out of self-blame and go into, again, it takes practice, go into problem-solving mode. And what you're going to find is that you're going to feel more challenged and you're going to feel more aroused and focused. Practice noticing how you explain favorable and unfavorable events in your life. And if you notice some negativity, if you notice some pessimism, practice using that optimistic style, which is, if it's bad, I go into problem-solving mode. If it's good, let me take a moment and feel pride in my achievement. Okay. All right, another way to manage stress, which is inevitable, is to balance social time and solitude time. We all have needs for both. Extroverts have more needs for togetherness. Introverts have more need for solitude, but whether you're extroverted or introverted, we need both, okay? As an introvert, I feel a lot of pressure from extroverts to do things like have meetings in person and have many meetings, and then also I'll just give you an example. This was somebody that a friend of mine came to my door a while ago. My friend is an extrovert. I had a really hard day at work. My friend comes to the door and says, "Hey, what you doing?" And I said, "Had a really hard day at work. I'm home with my cat right now," which is exactly where I want to be. I just want a quiet evening alone with my cat. Maybe I'll crochet. You want to go to the bar? I'm going to go to the bar and get something. No, I don't want to go. Well, how about if I meet you there? And it's like, and again, the extroverts often have a hard time because for them, what makes them happy is the togetherness. They had a hard day at work. They want to be together with everyone. And they have a harder time understanding that the introverts might want some more solitude than the extroverts are comfortable with. But we need both. We need time with family. We need time with friends. And we need to balance, and everybody has a different balance. You know for yourself when you're out of balance, you're going to feel irritable, you're going to feel pressured, and that doesn't feel good. So this is again where you have some control. What can you do to balance your social time and your solitude time? here's a picture of me with my family, because this is going on YouTube and I didn't get their permission to use the photo. They have hearts in front of their faces, but they look just like me. So this was one of the last together moments that we had over the summer. And then here's some pictures, and they're not the best pictures, but they're from my walks on the river. We were very lucky here in the Sacramento area to have free access to nature, to the river. Of course, if you're going to go on nature walks, make sure that you do so safely, make sure that you have whatever you need for protection. But the nature walks are freely available to everybody here. And you can go with yourself, or if you want to go with other people, you can do that too. But I like going on my solitary nature walks. It really just refreshes my soul. With the holidays coming up, there is going to be time together with others and also time alone. For many people, time with others is very nurturing, brings a lot of joy. But if you're feeling out of balance, do make sure that you take some time to be alone as well. Many of the holidays also have, deep spiritual meaning behind them. Take some time to reflect on that for yourself. Take some time to kind of go into, what is meaningful about this period for me. And you can bring those reflections and those revelations back to your family when you go back to holiday time with others. But it's important, again, to try and have that balance. And nobody else can get that balance for you. You have to be committed to balancing your time. There are some things I excel at and some things I don't so much. This is something that I do very well. And we'll talk about doing how to do that in just a moment. Balancing social time and solitude time also involves helping people. If you do volunteer work, whether it's at your church, whether it's at a local community center, whether it's at the local library, whether it's through your job, all of us here in Los Rios are doing work that helps others. That counts as social time. So if you are helping others, that can be your social time. Especially for people who feel like I'm not really good at things like small talk, but if you're in a position where you have a job, where you have goals to meet, where you're going to be helping other people, then there's less awkwardness and more of that positive interaction. Helping yourself when you're alone, whether it's reading self-help books that are useful to you, spiritual books that are useful to you, or just, getting yourself lost in a Netflix series, whatever it is that you want to do by yourself. Again, just making sure that you have that solitude time. Solitude is different than loneliness. Solitude is nurturing. Loneliness feels sad. Solitude feels satisfying. Also at work, are there things you can do to ensure that you are balancing your work with other people in teams, as well as your work time where you're working by yourself without interruption? What can you do to balance that so that you are feeling more stable, more secure, and less pressured? So firstly, in terms of summarizing choice 3, you have a choice in terms of how you balance that. Be true to yourself and your own needs, and then also balance yourself alone time with helping others and also being social. The actions to take are make time for activities that are meaningful to you. That will vary from individual to individual. What is it that's meaningful to you? What is it that you would like to spend more time nurturing and developing within yourself? And then consistently schedule time with family and friends. That is something that I do all the time. And I remember I said I'm pretty good at this. I do schedule time with family and friends, and I've got like coffee dates set up. I've got time on the phone set up. I have it blocked out on my calendar so that is my time for my family. That is my time for my friends. And then I also have time blocked out where it's just for me. And if somebody asks me to do something and I'm like, I have another obligation that day, let's pick another date. They don't need to know that it's my time to sit at home with my cat crocheting. They don't need to know what it is that I'm doing. But I do block off that time for me because I know that is not only meaningful to me, but I need it. I need alone time. If I don't have it, I am not fun to be around. All right. So the fourth choice is to take control of your time. So taking control is pretty well regimented. The first thing to do is to set goals. And in terms of setting goals, what you want are very specific, achievable goals. So taking a look at the tasks that are associated with your job. What's most important? Put that at the top of your list. The things that are less important, put it at the bottom. And I'm going to make this clear. We will never 100% get everything done. That will never happen. You are never going to get everything done. So what's most important? What do you want to get done? What do you need to get done? Put that at the top of your list. Okay. Set your goals, make them specific, make them measurable, make them achievable. If you do set goals, put them down on a list, put your tasks down, and then check them off. What research shows is that checking them off as you get them done gives you a little hit of dopamine. Dopamine is part of your natural reward system in your brain, and when you check that off and you feel good for a moment, you're like, oh my gosh, I did that. And what dopamine does is it brings your attention to those things that are rewarding. And so if you just take a moment and check it off of a list, you're going to feel good, and you're going to feel some pride, and you're going to feel some more positive emotions. So setting goals at work for the holidays and your personal life. Do what's most important first. Say no to less important things. And that's hard for a lot of people. So that was one thing that I wanted to talk about was, I'm sorry, I'm just checking the clock. One thing that I wanted to talk about is how to say no. A lot of people have difficulty, especially women have difficulty saying no. We've been taught to say yes. We've been told to accommodate. We've been raised to accommodate other people. So saying no can be very difficult. And so one of the ways that you say no is by making it clear that, gosh, it's really hard for me to say no. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do this for you, but I'm just not able to. I have too many other things that need my time right now. And if you have trouble in the moment, a really good kind of stall tactic is just to say, well, that sounds like you really need my help on that. Let me think about whether I can do that and get back to you. And then just take your time to think about how you're going to say no. Okay. And then get back to them. They're not going to forget. So do get back to them, but take the time, think it through, and say no in a way that feels good to you, so that you're not being harsh, so that you're taking into consideration that somebody's asking for your help because they like you, they want your assistance, they think that you're talented and able to do this thing that they're asking for help with. But we can't do it all. We have to say no sometimes. And then again, prioritizing family and friends, and then also your leisure time. Make time for all of it. Okay. So in summarizing choice number 4, reining in your time, setting specific, measurable, realistic goals, prioritizing, reserving time for family, friends, and yourself, and then practice setting boundaries in ways you can embrace. The last choice is activating your parasympathetic nervous system. Because stress is additive, if you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, so remember the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and digest. If you activate that on a regular basis, you may help lessen your reactivity to stress. As I've done this over the years, I meditate every day and I do yoga most every day. I have found that when I'm stuck in traffic, I'm much calmer. I don't react so much. When somebody asks me to do something I don't necessarily want to do, again, I feel less tension over it. If you activate your parasympathetic nervous system on a regular basis, you are increasing your sense of calm. And again, just a little bit every day makes a big difference. So this is just a list of many of the things you can do. I had mentioned I do meditation and yoga. So I'm a very busy woman, like many of you are. I meditate at night right before going to sleep. I take about 5 to 10 minutes. That's all I do. And it makes a big difference in how I feel. And I sleep really well. Yoga, the minimum that I do is 10 minutes most days. And I'm going to be honest, I skip days sometimes. And then I'm like, Natasha, it's 10 minutes. You can do 10 minutes. So the next day I do it. And so you don't have to give an hour, hour and a half. You can do just a little bit at a time. So in this list, just take a look at some of the things listed here. There's much more you can do. If you just take a few minutes on a consistent basis, it can have a powerful impact on how it is that you feel, increasing those positive emotions, increasing a sense of calm, having you be less reactive to the stressful things in your life. I am aware of the time and I want to finish up and open it up for questions in just a moment. So again, activating your parasympathetic nervous system can lessen your reactivity to stressful situations. I would suggest I'll send this out to Christina, and then she can send it out to other people. That previous slide, I'll send it out to Christina, and then if you could send it out to the folks that were here today, so that you just have that on hand. In terms of some of the things you can do a little bit every day that might be useful to you. And then just practice once a day, and then increase as time goes on, either the number of activities or the duration or the frequency as you see fit. So again, consistent small changes to your mindset and habits can have a significant impact on your well-being and your functioning. So we're going to practice together for just a moment. What we're going to practice is called box breathing. Don't do anything yet. I'll tell you what to do in just a moment. But this is essentially taking in a breath, holding it, and then letting out the breath, and then doing it again. And I want us to do it just twice, just to give you the experience. And we're going to use the little circle that's going around as our guide. So I'm going to let it go around one more time. And when it says breathe in, let's breathe in together. And then when it says hold, we'll hold together. And then when it says breathe out, we will breathe out together. Okay? We'll get there in just a second. Okay, now breathe in fully from your belly. Breathe in, hold. Breathe out slowly through your mouth, very slowly. Hold. Breathe in again from your belly, slowly. Hold. Breathe out once again, very slowly from your mouth. Hold. And now you can breathe normally again. Okay. If that is something you can do at your desk, it is something you can do in the car, it is something you can do before you go to sleep, something you can do before you sit down and have a meal. It doesn't take much time, but research shows that this again helps you that it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, having you feel more calm, having you feel more control in the moment. Another thing to do is to talk to yourself and remind yourself that you're capable and you can do it. What research shows is that if you use your name when you talk to yourself, it's much more effective than just saying you can do this. So I'm going to ask you for just a moment to say to yourself, your name to yourself, you can do this. Talk to yourself in the third person. So for me, it would be Natasha, you can do this. And then you say, I can do this. I've got this. Okay? So, and when on the count of 3, close your eyes. 1, 2, 3. Say your name. You can do this. I can do this. I've got this. You might want to take one more just cleansing breath to really feel that. Okay. I'm hoping that by the end of this talk, you are feeling a little calmer and more in control. You understand psychological stress. I'm hoping that the way you think about stress has changed a little bit, and that you know what to do to manage your thoughts and feelings, and know that you can take small, consistent actions for impactful, positive changes. So let's open this up for questions. Let me stop sharing my screen so I can actually see people. Yay! It's so weird talking to a blank screen, I have to say. So, if you have questions, please go ahead and use the reactions button located at the bottom and hit raise hand, and I will answer any questions that you have. No questions. All right. All right. If you want to email me, you can also, oh, there's a chat. What's going on in the chat? Oh, thank you. You're welcome. So, if you don't have questions, that's fine. If you want to email me with questions, you can do that as well. I'm on the system. And Christina, is it okay with you if I send you that slide that you can then send out to everyone? Is that all right? I don't want to add to your workload.
Of course, of course.
And I do want to give oh, thank you, Ruby. I do want to let everybody know that Christina has been awesome in putting this together. This was just scheduled a few weeks ago. Like she doesn't have enough to do already. And so I really, really 100% from the bottom of my heart appreciate that you were able to put this together and that you were able to support me to do this thing that I wanted to do. So thank you.
Oh, Natasha, come on, you had the hard part. Well, I'm very happy that you were able to share your information with us. And I just love that we had a good sized group today. This was
Yeah.
great. Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody, for joining us.
You're welcome. You have a good afternoon. Bye, everybody.
Thank